Hello, APM. Wanted to spend a few minutes with you and in the spirit of the safety Monday morning brief that we get from Brian and the team every week. Encourage us to take 5 for safety, and I want to do that today in reflection on some observations from our first quarter of the year. In a lot of ways, we have had a very strong first quarter, doing a lot of work. Particularly, we have steeply ramped up. The past month, we have averaged 2,500 or more employees each week, doing over 150,000 hours each week. That's a lot of work. And that's a lot of our teammates that are in the field doing work that's very important, but it also brings risk. And that's what I want to talk to us about for a few minutes today is risk. And risk when it comes to safety and to a certain extent quality, but also primarily when it comes to safety. And the reason why is because in the first quarter, we had 7 significant injuries requiring some sort of medical treatment beyond first aid. And the good news about that is none of those injuries are life-threatening or even life-altering, what we call AB events. They're not. But they're still injuries, and they're still employees who have left our job sites to get medical treatment, to get stitches, maybe a broken finger, or maybe a laceration that's required some sort of medical treatment. And that's still concerning. And I know it's concerning to all of us. And we need to have a discussion around some observations as to why that may be occurring. But I also, again, want to point out some positive things. Not only are our events not life-changing, life-altering, but we're also keeping our eye on the ball on significant risks. Lifting and rigging as an example. We haven't had any significant lifting and rigging events. In fact, I see our teams executing a lot of stop moments on things like lifting and rigging or lotto, lockout, tagout, where we clearly have our eye on the ball when it comes to risk in those areas. Risk on life-saving principle activities that if we do accept risk there and we don't mitigate it properly, we're going to have somebody significantly hurt or killed. So we're keeping our eye on the ball on the significant risks. And that's important. And that's one of the 2 objectives that I want us to get out of the discussion today. Don't lose sight. When we talk about hand injuries, when we talk about a line of fire injuries, when we talk about slip, trips, and falls injuries, don't lose sight. Don't shift our focus to those and lose sight of the ones that can really hurt and kill us, like lifting and rigging, like lotto. Let's keep our eye on the ball like we have done in this first quarter and like we have done for a while. So please continue to do that. I thank you for continuing to stop when things aren't right, to continuing to elevate concerns and doing a great job of mitigating those risks. But when it comes to hand injuries, when it comes to line of fire, slip, trip, and fall injuries, a discussion we're having, some observations that are being made is that we don't see risk very clearly in those areas. We don't see what we're doing is creating a risk for those types of injuries, or we have a greater tolerance for risk in those areas. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about our relationship to risk and the consequences of that relationship. Risk can be a good thing. Almost everything in life has some sort of risk tied to it. And not all risks have potential significant consequences. But the key is knowing where those consequences are and how to appropriately mitigate those risks. And when you recognize a risk, what are you going to do about it? And that's based on experience, and that's based on previous exposure to those risks. But we have a couple of things that automatically are working against us when it comes to risk. And why do we take risks? Do we take risks because we don't recognize it? Or we take risks because we mistakenly weigh the reward for that behavior, that risk, as being higher than the consequence. And we don't recognize those risks because we're either desensitized to it. We haven't been hurt in the past, so we believe we're not going to be hurt in the future, or we get distracted. Something else has our attention. Another task, another stimulus, something, an emotion that has got our attention that causes us to see the reward for engaging in a risky behavior is greater than that risk. And that's human nature. That's us being humans. We talk about this with every new superintendent, that our biology and our psychology play against us when it comes to risk. We're wired to go into that autopilot mind and to work without really being focused on certain things, particularly things that we don't think have significant consequences. And then we are also wired to be risk takers, looking for positive consequences from risk. If I cut this corner, I'm going to get done faster. And so we value speed and convenience and comfort over the risk that we're about to take. That's human nature. That's in all of us. And it takes active, conscious effort to mitigate those behaviors and those risks in our minds. And so as we close out this discussion on risk and our relationship to risk, I want to ask us to do a few things that will help us mitigate risk. And they're all things that are just reminding us of tools we have in our tool bag to help us. Think and plan ahead. Have a good pre-job brief. Execute a very good STA, stat card. Use procedures that are given to us. Those are things that help us see risks at times where we don't often see them and help us work through that methodically. Be present in your current task. Don't multitask. And I think a good tool here is the 2-minute drill. Use the 2-minute drill to help us focus in on the present moment and the present situation. Of course, use stop, particularly if things in your environment are causing you to be distracted. Too many things going on. Stop, reset. Have a questioning attitude around things that are in your area that don't look right. Engage your peers in peer checks so that they can help you see risks that you may not see clearly. Be intentional about what risks bring consequences. And particularly here, remember your why. And I'm going to circle back to that in a second. And then reflect on the risks that you have taken. Use the STA card's reflection column to really think about how well we did in mitigating risks and seeing risks, and maybe risks that we didn't see or that we didn't mitigate well. But I want to circle back to our why as we close up here. We talked about that oftentimes we take risks because we perceive the rewards, the benefits of those risks as outweighing the consequences. I'll cut this corner, I'll go a little bit faster, and that'll help me do this job a little bit quicker, and maybe I get home sooner. Well, what if it doesn't go right? What if you take that risk and that consequence means that you put your hand in a spot and your hand gets crushed? Or I put my body in the line of fire and I break something. Or I cut this corner on the walking trail and I slip and fall and I hit my head and now I've got a head injury. Those are real risks. We've seen those happen in our business. And those consequences can affect our life. Not having a good hand is going to affect your ability to throw a ball with your kid or to hold your wife's hand. Falling, breaking a leg or worse is going to affect your ability to do basic life activities. So remember your why you work safely, who you work safely for when you think about risks and consequences. And the next time you think about taking a risk, think about what the worst case scenario would be. And if that risk and that consequence is worth it. And my guess is you're gonna say it's not, because your why that's motivating you to work safely is going to tell you it's not worth the extra few seconds or minutes. If the trade-off is I potentially am going to go home and not be able to throw the ball with my kids, not be able to hold my wife's hand, not be able to take that walk, or worse. So hopefully this has been helpful to you, and really I just want us to have a conversation around our relationship to risk. And if you would do that for me over the next few weeks as we continue in our spring outage season, hopefully that will help us see risk better, that will help us weigh risk better, and that will help us stem this trend of injuries where we're not seeing risk and we're not weighing risk well. And remember, more than anything else, keep your eye on the ball, on the big risks. Don't get distracted. Keep your eye on the ball on the big risks like lifting and reading, like Lotto. Let's continue to do a good job there of identifying and weighing those risks. Like I said at the beginning, we got a lot of work going on, a lot of volume. Thank you very much for what you're doing. We're doing a lot of things well. I'm very proud of what we're doing. And I appreciate all of you, those in the field and those who support the field, who have helped us to execute a lot of work in this first 3 months of the year. Thank you very much.